it can't be the normal. So planning ahead, I think, becomes even more important.
So I think the gap in systems we'll probably see being something that extends into gap in cash flow. So Joanna, as you know, I've been working with a number of businesses since lockdown has started, and really taking them through the journey of how to gear their businesses during this time, how to get through the COVID-19 challenge, the economic challenge, from not just a survival point of view, but a growth point of view. And consistently, what I've been seeing coming back from them have been three primary concerns. The first one is, when lockdown is released, how do I go about being able to deliver on whether it's orders, whether it's my normal course of business? Some of my suppliers might not be up and running as yet. And so how do I access what I need to access in order to deliver to my clients and customers? So that's concern number one. Concern number two, and this is not necessarily in order of priority, because if it were, concern number two would be priority number one, and that's cash flow. Obviously, there's less money coming in for many businesses right now, and as a result, having to balance that off with the expenses that are still continuing. So, you know, in the case of agencies, it's staff who still need to be paid. Some of their suppliers for downstream execution might still need to be paid, etc. So typically a lot more money going out than maybe coming in. And again, understanding clients might have frozen budgets or frozen certain activities. So that does put some strain on cash flow. And then, of course, there's the big question of, you know, when does the switch off of lockdown actually happen? And the reality is that right now we're still in a very similar situation. Even with the move to level 4, we're still not on full release. And there's no timing for how long level 4 will continue. And do we move to level 3 from there, or do we perhaps bounce back to level 5?
Yeah.
You know, it's all unknowns. And so I think the point that you made earlier is absolutely crucial. It is plan, plan, plan. Because again, without a plan in hand, it's really hard to manage.
And it just increases the risk, doesn't it? So you know, I heard such a good quote the other day from one of the participants in another webinar I was on with WARC, with the WARC, and they were talking about how a plan or strategy removes the uncertainty. It's still a risk. But if you just in a sea of uncertainty without a plan of any sort, then there's really no chance of success. And actually what you would do as an agency is just go from panic to panic. And you know, get to the end of the month or halfway through the month, think, oh my God, now what are we going to do? So that planning ahead is crucial. And particularly, I think, in terms of guiding the clients and the marketers, because I'm not sure that marketers are also able to plan ahead that well. So they will be relying on their agencies to help them with the planning. So not only does the agency have to have its plan in place, but it also has to be working smart to be able to help the client plan better. Because I think the marketers, you know, we're already seeing certainly in the UK and the US, job losses in large corporates, people being put on furlough, etc. It's bound to be happening here. And in fact, I think that marketing departments anyway, even before COVID, were quite lean and mean because of the economy. So they just got worse. So in fact, the dependence now by the marketers on their agencies is probably even greater.
And I'm glad you picked up on that, because I was actually going to ask you, what in your opinion is the role that agencies need to be playing now with their clients?
Well, very much a strong advisory role, and very much partnership. Interestingly, one of the large agencies who looks after one of the largest retailers in the country, the CEO of the agency was telling us the other day, because we've been having catch-ups, of course, we're all Zoomed out and Microsoft Teamed out. we were having a catch up with him. It's one of the biggest independent agencies in the country. And he was telling us he now sits on the, because this very large food retailer also has this command council, or whatever it's called, and sits on that in order to be fully involved and to know and to be able to advise. So I think at senior level, the business owners, the people who are running the agency businesses, their role in terms of guiding and advising the clients is a much greater one, enhanced by COVID. And then I think the day-to-day people who are running the business in terms of the account handling side, etc., I think the more experienced ones will be called on quite a bit to help in terms of the planning side and the advising side. I think the more, you know, we're in a sort of lockdown world where all we think about is COVID and all we hear about is COVID. So what certainly strategy people and senior account handling people probably should be doing is to make sure they keep looking outwards to find other news, to see what else could be happening that they could bring to bear, which would help the marketer. And one of the other really great quotes I heard the other day, it's about empathy, entertainment, and comedy. So to try and keep things light is also important, because we are in a fearful space. It's easy to fall back into that fear, and I think as agencies will need to find a way to inspire their own people, but to also inspire the marketers, so that the fear factor falls away. To a certain extent.
No, absolutely. And I think as an extension of that, the conversation around what constitutes partnership right now in the client-agency relationship is absolutely crucial. And therefore, that definition of what the agency provides as value into their client relationship is absolutely crucial. And it's almost one of those, I suppose it's a seminal moment in client-agency relationships, right? I mean, it really tests depth, it tests relationship, and it tests the endurance of strategy as well. So it's to use an overplayed term, it's a very interesting time right now.
It is. It's also about, you know, not using the opportunity to sell. So highly skilled advertising agency people will know the right time to sell, and it's not about you know, yes, you've got to bring opportunities to the marketers and certainly ideas, but the hard sell, timing on that is critical. I think that requires a great skill, and also a large dose of empathy. That's where we need to be as empathetic as possible with everybody, but with agencies, they certainly need to display that empathy. And I think that agencies will get that same feeling back. If they're displaying it, they'll get that back. It's about taking the time, isn't it, to ask, well, how are you? Normally, we're going, when as we as individuals, as people go into meetings, we see each other, we get signals from each other's movements, from facial expressions. I mean, there's all this stuff that goes on here around the neuro-linguistic stuff. Not seeing that. We're on these screens, and we're hearing each other, and we think we're seeing each other, but are we really? And we rely a lot on non-verbal communication, to screens and body language. I mean, I think there's a whole paper that could be written about that, because you can tell, you know, by the energy of the people. So yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky time. One of the biggest things that I think the responsibility will fall on shoulders within agencies and obviously among the marketers is burnout factor.
Oh yeah.
With all this added responsibility, with the stresses and strains of the uncertainty about, well, okay, is this going to last? How long is it going to last? Are our budgets going to be cut? Will I have a job next month? All of those uncertainties are sitting in people's minds, no matter how reassured they are and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yet they've still got to work. And they're working remotely. So they're not even with their people. They can, and you know, South Africans have become big huggers in the last couple of years. I mean, I've been working for a long time now, as I tell everybody. And the formal handshake is what I grew up with. So to see hugging and lovely, but we can't even do that anymore. So we're not even getting the warmth of another body to help us get through a moment. So I don't know what you think. I don't know what you've observed with your other clients and small businesses regarding burnout. What do you think the strategy there should be to help agencies?
So there's actually been, and I think there's an issue with burnout on two levels. There's, funnily enough, there has actually been a paper that's been brought out on Zoom stress. It's been called.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, it's because, you know, every Zoom call that you participate in is in effect a performance. You know, you're on camera for the duration of the call. There's no real time to be able to zone out as you might do in a meeting. You know, just taking that minute to sit back while the rest of the meeting carries on. But you're on. Constantly, you have the sense of being watched all the time. Yeah. And so everything you say is potentially recorded, but is also visible to literally everybody on their screen. Not to mention the fact that, and you pointed out, all the neuro-linguistic things, we're now under pressure to actually do things like exaggerate our movements. You know, we've got to nod vigorously so that people can actually see us doing it, in agreement. Yeah. And so all of that is a constant performance, which is mentally and emotionally taxing. And so they've actually found now that, yes, people are a lot more stressed because of the Zoom call, the phenomenon of the Zoom call. But of course, now there's another form of stress, and it's almost a two-way stress, I think. And that is that, one, as I like to put it, teams are removed from the mothership of the organization. So people are still in teams, but very much individualized. And so the pressure to remain connected with the dispersed team is huge, firstly. Secondly, for that team somehow to remain connected with the client and with agency leadership or business leadership is another level of stress. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the downward level of stress from the business ownership and management around managing their teams, and more importantly, and I'll make the point very specifically, more importantly, leading their teams. Because virtual leadership is now a massive demand on the ownership and the management of, whether it's an agency, whether it's a business. And of course, leadership is not management, and management is not leadership. So understanding that and understanding how we then continue with the vision, with the quality levels, with the commitment, with the connection to our teams and our staff it's an immense challenge. And so, you know, you've got not just the stress around delivering, whether it's service, whether it's product, whether it's internals, but also now all of the connection angst that potentially comes along with that as well. So the burnout factor does get quite high. Add to that the fact that we now have so much spare time in our lives because we're not commuting to the office. Yeah. We're not doing the water cooler conversations.
Yeah. We're not popping out to get lunch.
Exactly. And of course, in agencies, you know, the smoke break is pretty much the same as a brainstorming session. Yeah. As is the coffee conversation or the Friday afternoon drinks. I mean, these are things that we did as part of agency culture and as part of connections. All of that time is now available. And what I have been seeing is that people's days have extended, started earlier and ending earlier. So we now think nothing of a meeting starting at 7:30 in the morning, because we have nowhere to go. We don't have to sit in traffic. So we've got an extra 2 hours of productivity or busyness. Might not be productive, but busyness.
Yeah, busyness, I think, is the word. Yeah.
Yeah. And then towards the end of the day, we're still carrying on 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and we wonder why we're feeling tired. And consistently across, whether it's my clients or just businesses that I speak to, the 3 areas that impact everybody is team, time, and money. Money we've spoken about, it's the cash flow.
Yeah.
Time has always been a matter of scarcity.
Yeah.
It's now a matter of value. How much value is my input actually delivering into what I'm doing? Am I overextending my day? And I think that speaks into the burnout question you were asking about as well. And then, of course, there is just the question of team. And it's, will the team be ready? And something I was thinking about in anticipation of the president's announcement was, we've had the change of people needing to go off, disperse, almost a diaspora, if you'd like. People going off and dispersing and still needing to work and deliver what they needed to deliver. That was one change. Then adapting to how the people they work with have adapted to that situation, that's another change. Potentially, when everybody comes flooding back into an organization, that's a whole new change. And so it's another change towards a new normal, which is yet to be defined. But they are going to be under pressure to have to deliver for clients, to have to deliver for the agency, to get back into the swing of things as quickly as possible. And so that pressure and that burnout can be a very, very real thing from quite early on, actually.
I think you're right. And I think maybe one of the things that we have to plan or get agency leaders and indeed marketing leaders to plan is for their teams to have a holiday. Because, nobody's going to be able to have a holiday yet. Well, at least they could, but then they'll just be sitting at home. So I think when we get to a certain level within the sort of lockdown exit, then there's going to need to be some holidays because people, April is the classic month. I feel as though be careful what you wish for. But I've always said for the last couple of years, oh God, April is such a pain because of all these holidays and people gone. And now suddenly everybody's here. And I think that, which is probably a very good thing for the economy, I must say, those of us who've been able to work. I think that, I think people will need to have a break and they'll need to be able to get away. So as soon as I think see agencies and marketers taking some leave because they're going to need it. They're going to.
Yeah. But I think, what this has really highlighted for me is whether it's an agency or any other form of business, the focus on things like the systems, the ways of doing things. Fantastic opportunity now actually testing how ingrained culture is within particular businesses. Can we continue the same levels of quality, the same levels of output, the same levels of compliance while we're actually divorced from the hub, from the plug-in point. And so it's a great opportunity to identify where there are potential gaps and how then to go about redressing those and creating tighter culture bonds and better performing systems actually in a business.
I think that's true. And I think just to add another level on that is to say, well, yes, can we maintain those systems, even add more to them so they work even better? And in certain areas, should we? Because there's also the going on to the burnout factor, there's always the danger of overdoing it in areas that actually aren't necessary at a time like this. So again, I think that that's something to weigh up, and we'll only see that as time goes on.
I think just from my side, I really just want to say that I think the three challenges that that agencies will see from this point on is probably going to be retention.
Yeah.
Either client or client level from a scope point of view, delivery, whether that's capacity, whether that's pace, and then of course systems.
Yeah.
Delivery and systems, and how that relates to business growth as well, and encompassing all of that, cash flow.
Cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Yes.